Awesome. All right. Welcome, everyone. Where we're kicking off today is page 100. And it's going to be the second full paragraph. And we're right and smack dab in the middle of working with others. And the part of working with others that we're sort of, wrapping up, landing the plane on, and then going to be transitioning to a different part. But the part that we're wrapping up is really this idea of, the families and how they can reconcile. And this idea that this theme that we've seen that, man, our sobriety is not contingent. Now, we were talking a lot about this last week, but our sobriety is not contingent on anything outside of ourselves. It's not contingent on the relationship that we have or the relationship that we don't have. It is contingent upon our relationship with God. And we were talking about powerful promises. Now, as we dive in, page 100, welcome those that just joined. Second paragraph, when working with a man. So what we're talking about is sponsoring and trying to navigate some of those family difficulties. You're saying that there'd be family difficulties in early sobriety? I'm shocked already. So when working with a man and his family, you should be careful, or you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. There was a time I was sponsoring somebody, and I was also very it was like almost I was sponsoring the whole family, and there'd be times the husband and wife would be having a bit of a thing, and I'd be like, I'm not taking care not to participate in the quarrels. In fact, sometimes I'm starting them. But what it's saying is don't get in the middle of those domestic disputes, which is a lot easier nowadays, because nowadays we meet the alcoholic at a meeting, and we don't usually meet them through the family, so we're not often triangulated as some of the early members might have been if they had met their prospective alcoholic through a family member. But this is an important idea. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do. And I just want to emphasize the word helpful. We are in the chapter working with others, not working on them, not fixing, changing, managing. And that my goal in any sponsor-sponsee relationship, and really, to be honest, any goal in any relationship that I have, is to be helpful. I'm not there to save, but man, it is, I've joked with my sponsor, no capes. It is hard not to throw on that cape and want to be, boo, here I am to save the day. But all I am called to do is to show up and to do my best to be helpful. Now it says, but urge upon a man's family that he's been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. Again, some of us might be taking the thing of yes, I am newly sober. I am a sick person. I would like the kid gloves. If you could wrap me in cotton wool and put me on a pedestal, that would be delightful. That's a nod to the family afterward. Thank you. That's not the takeaway that we're going to take, and we don't throw that in our family's face. But, welcome page 100, second full paragraph. But that idea that as an alcoholic, I am a sick person. Because I don't know about you. I felt like I was the worst person that I ever lived. I thought I was weak. I thought I was morally bankrupt. I thought there was something irrevocably wrong with who I was. You know what I mean? I didn't, it's a disease. And I'm like, it's an illness. But I went on that tangent so much at the other study. I won't do it in this one. But that idea where it's it's for sure, for you guys, it's an illness. For you guys, it's a disease. But for me, I'm just the worst person that ever lived. But I want to emphasize something. He is sick. The alcoholic is sick. I am up against an illness over which I could not possibly have any power. This is not about being bad or immoral or weak-willed or not trying hard enough. I am up against an illness which no human power is sufficient. And so it says he's a sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. Now, this is an interesting part of the book because we begin to awaken to this non-dual consciousness. That non-dual consciousness is that idea where two things are true. Two seeming contradictory things are true. The first thing that without question we've seen up until page 100 is that spectacular, powerful recoveries, spiritual awakenings are possible. We can be absolutely, utterly transformed almost overnight, very quickly. And sometimes we still have trouble putting our socks away. And sometimes we still have some of the, not you guys are just absolute angels, but this smelly little drunk sometimes has these nagging defects of character that don't seem to, float away, that they seem to grab a hold. So it says, so when it says you should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy, again, the takeaway for us is that I need to be aware of resentment and jealousy. I need to be free of those things. I don't have the luxury of nursing a resentment. I don't have the luxury of wrapping myself in a nice warm blanket of jealousy. I imagine it's a shiny fabric, that jealousy. I don't have that luxury. It says you should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. So where two things are true, that we have 180 radical recoveries, and yet still there are areas in our life where we fall short. And bear with me with this. It's a little rude because I thought I'd just write a little bit of inventory, make an amend or two, and I would be Little Miss Perfect Pants. Where is my tiara? Perfect. Here I am. I am probably the last person on earth who should have a tiara. I don't have a tiara personality, but Mars, my tiara. I think I should be as clean as the driven snow. I will never make a mistake. There shall be no errors in all perpetuity of my existence. I shall be perfect. Now, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to fall short. And there will be defects of character that hang on, that I struggle with. And why that's important, or at least why I'm going to talk about what that's important, is because I'm sure I'm the only one here that struggles with perfectionism. I know. It's just me. And I was on a trip that was, I won't go into details, but it was really, really, really difficult. And it was really, really difficult, physically. And there are times on this trip where I'm dealing with a lot and doing the big book studies and people, reaching out and sponsors and all that. And I'm like, my heart posture has been a little bit off. And it was actually a sponsee that was like, hey, Paige, you think you might be having some perfectionism there? And I'm like, nailed it. Is what that is. Yes. So I know I'm the only one that struggles with perfectionism, and you little perfect beings do not struggle with it. But what I will say is that it's understandable that we're still going to be imperfect, that we're still going to make mistakes. And I'm going to say something not actually controversial, because I haven't been relieved of the defective character that allows me to not need you to like me. But what I will say is I need my defects of character to allow me to grow. Yes, exactly. It is spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. Not progress, not perfection, as y'all know, but spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. Because it is only from the pain of being a human being that at first I really get to grow and experience. Now, that's not true if I'm not doing anything with it. That's not true if I'm showing up to, and I knew you guys would never show up to a page-by-page big book study on a Wednesdays. By the way, everyone thinks that name is so clever, and I always give you credit because I didn't come up with it. I'm like, it wasn't me. But, I know that you guys would never show up to a big book study like this and be like, Paige and judge. I know you would never, but I know that I've shown up to meetings and been judgmental a time or two. Now, if all I do is sit and judge, that doesn't help me. But if I become aware of that judgment, if I see that it's separating me from God and me from you, if I see that that is something that I need to not have, and I lean into God's power, so I pray for that to be removed. I turn to people I can help. I try to change the posture of my heart, or let God change the posture of my heart. I lift you up. I pump your tires. Man, I grow in that awakening through that experience of that defective character. Again, if I'm like, you are being judged and I'm right about my judgment, there's nowhere to go. But God's grace is in my struggles. God's grace is in my imperfection. I need that to grow. Now, I do a big book study on Fridays with a dear friend, Terry, and he often talks about growing at the pace of pain. Pew, 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 Paul knows what's up. And Terry is not wrong. So many of us, when we come here, that's the speed at which I grew. But after a while, I don't have to grow at the pace of pain anymore. I can grow at the speed of desire, of yearning to have more, to seek a deeper experience. And the more that I do that, the easier it is to grow in that way, and not just because I've had my butt kicked by my defects of character. So I want you to know, we do not have to be driven to do this thing because of alcoholism is kicking our butt. Of course, at first we do, or, the unmanageability. But there's a point where we get to be led, where we want to know more and we want to seek more. And it is a powerful thing when that happens. So it says, show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. And welcome, we're on page 100. So show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. And growth is the name of the game. As Pauline put in the chat, it is spiritual progress. How am I progressing spiritually? And I wasn't going to go on this tangent, but we on the tangent, so here we are. Yeah, a lot of times we hear in the rooms, it's progress, not perfection. Now, this is one of the few areas where I really am pedantic. And I really will, and I won't kind of correct anyone, but I really want to emphasize it's not progress, not perfection. It is spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection, because how often have I progressed in terms of getting the job, getting the car, the career, the promotion, the relationship, the children back, the family back, the new iPhone, the new whatever. And none of that has the power to keep me sober. Growing in social acceptability does not mean that I'm going to stay sober. Nothing less than a spiritual awakening that I grow and that I deepen is enough to keep somebody like me sober. So how am I growing spiritually? That is the name of the game. Spiritual growth. So this is a period of growth, spiritual growth. And we're just learning to pick up these spiritual tools. We're just learning to grow. And it says, ask them to remember when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. And we're going to go into a lot more detail about some of this stuff and some of these difficulties in the second half of Two Wives in the chapter, The Family Afterwards. But I'm just going to give us a little bit of a glimpse without bouncing around. And that's because the vertigo's bad. I can't be bouncing today. That's a joke, but there's some truth in it. But it's in Family Afterward, Two Wives. There's a theme of picking our battles. And this idea that, man, this is a human being who is doomed to die a horrific death. Alcoholics do not die in nice ways. We only die. Untreated, we only die some of the most horrific ways there is to no longer be here. And we take our loved ones along for that horrific ride. Man, that's what we're up against. And so it's like, hey, I know buddy left the socks out again, or put the toilet paper roll the wrong way. I don't have an opinion on which way. But let's pick our battles. But also, there is a thing that happens, and it happens in us, but it also happens in our loved ones where, we have this vision in our minds. I.e., we're sitting in the God chair playing God, but we have this, and it's human and natural, so don't feel bad about it. But I have this vision of who this person is going to be now that they're sober. Now, I know nobody here started sponsoring anyone and imagined what they were going to say when you gave them their coin at their 1 year. I know nobody has ever done that. Actually, I'm not getting a lot of yes. Okay, I've never. Okay, cool, that's fine. Me neither. Yeah, I have. But that idea is we create these expectations in our mind of what it's going to look like and what it's going to be. And so often I'm wrong. And so it's also preparing us or the family members for that. It goes on to say, if you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. And this way you can set them on the right track without being critical of them. This is an important idea. We tend to not listen to advice. Just like and I don't even think it's just alcoholics. Now, to be fair, I do think we might have a bit of a strain of defiance on that one. But you all know when your sponsor's telling you to do a thing, and they're telling you to do the same thing over and over and over again, which is just wild. And also, by the way, I'm going to let you know, this is a little sponsy little trick that I'm going to put it in your pocket. It's for you. It's free. A little free tip and trick. If you want your sponsor to stop giving you the same suggestion over and over and over and over again, you want to know how you make that stop? You do the thing that they're asking you to do. It's wild. It's wild. That's why they're asking me to do it. It's because I haven't been doing it. Oh, I'm the worst. Some of you saw that coming and were like, oh no, Paige, don't you dare. But that's the thing is we tend to learn. Not by people telling me what to do, but you showing me what you're doing and you showing me what you've done. I think we all know what it's like when there's that miserable old timer who hasn't touched the steps in a long time, and I joke about like you don't want to have a cigarette next to them because they'll go up like kindling, and it's forest fire season. We got to be careful. But I mean they are in pain. That is operating from pain when they're like that. So again, to breed that empathy. But we all know what it's like when the angriest person in the room is like, here's what you need to do. And it's like, do I? Do I? So me just telling you what you should do, not helpful. But me showing you what I've done, showing you from my firsthand lived experience what to do, man, that is helpful. I'm not here to nag. I mean, there's a wonderful woman, Judith R., and I remember she would write these little posts that are inspirational and spiritual in nature. And she spoke about violence. And she was describing things that were violent. And one of the things she said was nagging. And I was like, oh, I feel very called out, which is actually a delightful feeling where I'm like, oh, because I can be a bit of a nag. But it really is like, yeah, like seeing that in that way, like nagging is not helpful. But what is helpful? Me sharing my experience. And so I've got to have that experience to share. So in that way, you can set them on the right track. The track is the course of action. I want to fix, save, manage, control people's feelings and emotions. And I want to solve their problem. I want to put on the cape, no capes. But I cannot do that. That doesn't work. But I set them on the path. The path is the spiritual actions of the 12 steps is directed out of this book. That's the path. Without being critical. So the story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. My experience with my pain, my experience with my suffering, my experience with my defects, my experience, and moving through that with the course of action that is the 12 steps, that carries weight. That has power. Now, here's where we transition. We transition to a part of the book that is often, I'll be honest, a little, in my experience, or what feels to be a little misunderstood. Now, I will also say, now, I think it's fine, but, sometimes, and we're going to have a new experience when we get to the chapter 2 Wives, I promise that. I promise that we are going to see that chapter, unless you've done it with me before. But if you've never done it with me before, you're going to see that chapter in a radically new way, in a way that you never saw that chapter before. Now I feel like I'm setting the bar too high. I'm like, oh no, I've done that to me. But sometimes we will hear that, that chapter is out of date. And we're going to see that that's not fully the case. Where we see it through a certain lens, we're going to see it through a radically different lens. But I want to say that this part of the chapter, working with others, there are elements of working with others which are products of its time. Now, I'll get into more detail as we go on. But the time that it was in was reasonably a little while after the repeal of the 18th Amendment. And that was what made the amendment is what made the sale of alcohol illegal in the United States. And that was a contentious issue. That was a hot button issue. That was, the people were fighting over that and had been fighting over that. And that's the sort of climate in which Alcoholics Anonymous is sort of born. And so a lot of what we're going to see in this part of the book is sort of trying to navigate some of that dicey political issue in a neutral way. That we have no opinion on the temperance movement, where it's like, yeah, in 2025, that word means what now, right? With the temperance were the people that like, we want alcohol to be illegal, that sort of movement. So there's going to be some stuff in here. But also, this is the part of the book that promises us complete freedom. So it says, assuming we are spiritually fit. Now, you know what it says about assumptions. I won't land that joke. I'm not going to land it. But that's what we're talking about, spiritually fit. So I want to be very clear about what it means to be spiritually fit. To be spiritually fit, I need a foundation. That foundation is all 12 steps. The context is we are in the chapter working with others. 12-step work. None of this, full stop, applies if I'm not, have done my 4, done my 5, made amends, I'm working with others. It does not apply. It does not apply. Now, if I am 12-stepped, I'm recovered, I'm working with others, I'm rock and rolling my prayer, meditation, inventory life, I'm doing the deal. Having a C, am I on the beam? That's what we're going to talk about. So oftentimes we just sort of take this as black and white, all or nothing, but that's the context. So we're assuming we're spiritually fit. That's the starting blocks. That we are recovered, working with others, made our amends, that place. We can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. As in my brain, I'm like, a cartwheel. I can't do a cartwheel. And nobody said alcoholics can't. But I'll tell you, when I was about like 12 drinks in, they said I probably shouldn't. So it says people have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that is not necessarily so. So what we're talking about is, man, if we're new in recovery, if we haven't done a 4th step, if we're not working with others, if we've not made our amends, sure. Well, I'm not going to say avoid moving pictures where there's, but I do know that some people saw Wolf of Wall Street and it was a little much. But some of I can't even think of a big drinking movie. But it's that idea if I haven't done this work, it's not a good idea for me to go to a bar because I have no defense. Now, not going to a bar is not a defense, but I have no defense. So I ought not go to a bar. It's not a good idea to go to the the after party or the work thing or maybe even the reception for the wedding if it's going to be a big drink up, if I'm not recovered. Now, does that mean what I am saying is just avoid social gatherings? No. What I am saying is then let's hustle. Let's work at this thing hard and fast so that you can go anywhere, so that you have that freedom. That's what I'm saying. So it says we meet these conditions every day. Now, this paragraph is important. It's telling us really what happens here in Alcoholics Anonymous. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. You can make a note that when we specifically talk about an alcoholic mind, what we are talking about is the mental obsession. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. That's what we do. So the spiritual malady That's not limited to alcoholics, but that is what we treat in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I treat the restless, irritable discontent, when I treat that hole in the depth of my soul, that screaming that's coming from the inside of who I am, the inability to sit and be okay in my own skin, when I treat that, the obsession of the mind, the thought that I have when I am sober that tells me this time will be different, nobody will ever know, I'll just go out for 3 drinks, etc., etc. That thought goes. That is the order. Now, if you're here today and you're like, that sounds good, how do I treat the spiritual malady? How do I treat it? That is what the 12 steps do. We treat it with the spiritual awakening, the spiritual experience, and the 12 steps are what gets us there. And, sometimes I go to a meeting and there's some people that are like, we just don't know what happens. Something happens and we don't know what it is. And I'm like, we do. We do. It's in the book. It's explained. This is what happens. And it's given in detail and how it works. Is I treat that conscious sense of separation from God. And actually, this is the second time I did this today, so apologies for the people who've heard it. What it's like I'm living my life. It's even before I take a drink. I'm living my life in pain. I am in so much pain, and that pain that I'm in is blocking me from this power. And every pain is like a brick between me and this power, and I'm building this wall. And because I'm in so much pain, I start to act out of selfishness and self-centeredness and resentments and fear and guilt and shame. And those are bricks and bricks and bricks and bricks that I put in this wall between me and this power that is greater than me. And when I'm in behind that wall and in the darkness, there is no solution, and I will drink again. But the 12 steps, what they do is they take a wrecking ball to that wall, and we bust it apart. And that power flows in. And when that power flows in, that light flows in. I'm not in that darkness. I'm not in that pain. And I do not need to take that drink. I've got to continue to clear away, because there will be new bricks. There will be these things that are blocking me from this power. I've got to continue to clear them away. But that's what we're doing here. I clear away the stuff between me and this power, and this power flows through me. So, and it also tells us, why would I relapse? Sometimes we act like, like it's a mystery. We got to get Sherlock Holmes on the case. Why would somebody relapse? Well, elementary, my dear Watson. Gosh, it came out of my mouth before I could stop it. But it is, because that's what alcoholics do. Alcoholism means I will drink again. And the only thing that we have found to put between me and that first drink is a spiritual awakening. And the way that we have to bring that about again and again and again is the 12 steps. So it's telling us there's something the matter with this spiritual status. That's useful information. That if I can't be free, that tells me I've got some work to do. Not that I'm bad, not that I'm weak, not that I'm immoral, not that I don't want it bad enough. But I am blocked from the power that I need. So let's get unblocked, and let's do it quickly. His only chance for sobriety would be somewhere like the Greenland ice cap. And even there, now I did do some looking up, because some of y'all know that I'm really interested in geography. And I will say the Greenland flag, it looks like a little Pokemon ball. Like it is. I really do enjoy it. But Greenland, in the Inuit people call it Kalalet, and the people, the Greenlandic people, are called Nunat. So it is Kalalet Nunat, the people of Greenland. So that's their. I know. I was telling Rob earlier. I'm like, oh man, I got to brush up on my Greenlandic pronunciation, because we're going to be in this part of the book today. Did I butcher the pronunciation? Yeah, absolutely I did. But I'm giving it my best go. And even there, somebody might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin anything, or ruin everything. So, anyone here ever try a geographic? I have a friend, I met her in, we were speaking at a conference in South Dakota. She was just in Greenland this past week. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful out that way. But anyone, I'm sure I cannot be the only one that tried the geographic. And wouldn't you know, I am just as alcoholic in Calgary, Alberta as I was in Lethbridge, Alberta. Now, it wasn't that far of a geographic, but I have a sneaking suspicion we put me anywhere on earth. For some strange reason, that alcoholism seems to find me. And I actually know some people who have lived in countries where alcohol is illegal. Still managed to get drunk. Still managed to get drunk. So again, what's the point of this? The point of this story is that wherever I go, there I am with my alcoholism. And again, that my sobriety is not contingent on anything outside of myself. It is contingent upon my relationship with God. So ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory that he would escape the alcoholic problem. The idea is, anyone here ever have that experience where we go to rehab, detox, sober living, and get drunk right after? Heck, you ever? And I know some people get drunk while you're in there. You know, get a little tipsy on the hand sanitizer. I mean, I've never drank hand sanitizer. Absolutely. Listen, here's what I will say. I'm somebody more of a mouthwash drinker. Like a lady, it's like schnapps. It is not like schnapps. It is nothing like schnapps. But what I will say is, to be an alcoholic, you do not need to have consumed non-beverage alcohol. But I am just going to throw it out there. Only in alcoholics drinking the hand sanitizer or drinking the Listerine. Sorry, I shouldn't name brands. Name brands. I've spent some time with the scope. Alrighty. So it says, in our belief, any scheme. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will. Oh. Back in the day, yeah. So in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield a sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. So any plan to overcome alcoholism, which is just avoid alcohol or avoiding our triggers. Again, I was saying this at the earlier meeting. You know what I found to be a real trigger for my alcoholism? Consciousness. Now, I will say, I did try to blot out that consciousness, but the only way that I found to do that was drinking. So I didn't really have a way to get free of that trigger. So again, what we're saying is the problem is never out here. The problem is in here. The problem is that sense of disconnect with that power greater than myself. So it says, if the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time. But he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We can stop and think about those times that we have tried to shield ourselves from temptation, changing jobs, friends, relationships, going to the geographic treatment centers. And there's nothing wrong with treatment centers. Sometimes there are times where we do have to take a geographic and move to just get a fresh start. But that by itself is not a solution. Does our experience show that? That we've tried some of these things to shield ourselves. We got really busy, picked up a whole lot of hobbies, got hobbies. You guys all know, speak about like back in the day, I was ripped, but I kept getting ripped. I assure you, I no longer have abs, but there was a time when I did, and those abs did not lead to abstinence. That was a long time ago, by the way. When I talk about abs, that is a distant memory in a far gone era. I'm squishy, and I'm fine with that. But none of those things work. I tried to shield myself. Focus on work, focus on family, focus on this, focus on that, and health. Doesn't matter how many smoothies you have that are green. I'll end up back in the Listerine. I didn't plan for it to rhyme, but I saw that was happening, and I couldn't stop that either. I'm so sorry. I try all these things, and many of them are not bad things, but they are not sufficient to keep me sober. So it says, we have tried these methods, these attempts to do the impossible have always failed. For an alcoholic to stay sober on human power, on willpower, on just meetings or, things that are good and helpful, but not a spiritual awakening is impossible. And that might sound like an ominous warning, but I really mean it as a message of hope. Because if you are struggling, have been struggling, it is not that there's something wrong with you. It is alcoholism. That's what it is. It is impossible for us to stay sober on our own power. So it says our rule. Hey, I thought there were no rules. That looks a little ruly. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking. And then this is in italics, which means important. Now, as some of you guys will remember, at the start of the book, I was explaining that the italics were meant for emphasis. Now, I've had some people look into it. I've had some people as if I'm like, no, I was like, we gotta look into it. And then somebody else who has a similar sort of brain chemistry was like, I shall look into it. I believe me, I don't have like an assistant. Some of you are like, we know, you're on your own, girl. You are helped by the grace of God and like, woo, and not much else. But we've looked into it. And so there was that idea that it was more expensive to use italics because you'd have to change the blocks. Now, that was true probably up until the decade or so that this book was written. So that's not true. But I always like to talk about why would that myth persist? That it was more expensive to put in italics. So it's a myth, it's not true, but why would it persist? Now, I repeated it because I thought it was true, But what we're trying to do is emphasize the importance of the italics. This is vitally important information. So we're putting in our minds, the first 100 members, 80, who had no money, they spent extra money on it. They didn't, but that's sort of the mental view. This is important. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking, and in italics, neon lights, if we have a legitimate reason for being there. But what is the first qualification that we've already spoken about? I need to be recovered. I need to be at a place where I'm working with others. I'm sponsoring others. I've made amends. That's the bare minimum requirement to even address this conversation. Now the rule is looking at, like, I'm already recovered. Do I have a good reason? And it says that includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain ordinary whoopee parties. I didn't have to say it like that. That was a choice. And thank goodness I can go to a whoopee party. I'll be honest with you. I'm sort of at this age, like I'm spiritually geriatric or something. I'm like, I don't want to go to any of those. All of those sound awful. But I can if I want to. The thing is, I don't want to. And if you're like, girl, what's a whoopee party? Think like a house party, like a kegger, like maybe even like a barbecue sort of deal. But yeah, if you want to go to those things, you can. But I mean, there was a point in my life, I don't know what it was, but it's like, I don't want to. No bar, no reception, no wedding. I'm good. I'll be at home on the couch. Thank you. Or I'll be outside looking at a bird. It really sneaks up on you. Just kind of like alcoholism. We'll throw that out there. Yeah. Alrighty. So it says, to a person, explain whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting capital P providence. So what we're talking about, tempting fate, tempting God, tempting, like, you're going to send an alcoholic to a whoopee party? Do y'all know what happens there? It's like you're tempting fate. And it says, but it isn't. It may seem like it, but it isn't. You will note that we made an important qualification. Now, this is something that is so often missed. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, not a blanket statement. Again, this does not apply if I have not recovered. If I'm not sponsoring others, doesn't apply to me. If I've not made amends, does not apply to me. If I'm working on my 4, does not apply to me. So glad you're working on your 4. I'd rather hang out with you working on your 4 than at a nightclub. Does not apply. So it says Therefore, on each occasion, ask yourself, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Do I have a good reason? Do I have a legitimate reason, a continuation of what we saw in the italics? Is there a good reason for me to go? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? You know, that thing when somebody's like drinking and you just want to get a smell of their drink, like that sort of, but it's like the smell of the environment. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. Back in the day, like in my early sobriety, I would go, there were meetings that were held at a wet shelter. The wet shelter, it also had a detox. A wet shelter is one where it's intentionally there for people to go when they are intoxicated. Street level, that's what it is. I'd go to that meeting for the vicarious pleasure. I'm like, oh, back in the day, like I am a behind the dumpster sort of gal. I'm like, oh, you know, it's not like, ooh, let me have a smell of the Chardonnay. It's like the distinct aroma of street feet, which if you've never experienced, you don't eat. Yeah, it's a thing. Ooh, the olfactory glands on that one. All I'm saying, the takeaway, I'm not more alcoholic than anyone else, but I will say I have something else wrong with me. That's for sure. But it says, if you can answer these questions satisfactorily, do I have any good social, business, or personal reason? Is there a good reason for me to go? And if I can answer that to satisfactorily, there's no reason to be afraid, no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. And I love this. This is another example of the book meeting us where we're at. It's like, it's saying like, yeah, if you're not in a good place, don't go. Not if you're not in a good place, you don't have a good reason to go, you are bad. Shame, shame, shame. No. In fact, it's going to, like it always does, gives us directions on what to do. And it says, but be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start. Solid spiritual ground. There is no ground unless I am recovered. If I am not sponsoring others, there is no ground. There is no foundation. And I need to at least have that foundation. And that your motive in going is thoroughly good. I will point out this is one of the few places where it's like asking me to check my motives. There's a lot of places that it doesn't ask me to check my motives. Like before I get a service commitment, to be fair, that's not mentioned so much. Before I make an amends, because a lot of times I know, I don't have good motives. Girl, you go I'll help you work on the script. You go make that motive, or you go make that amends. Your motives will get in line. Or like, I don't know what my motives are before sponsoring somebody. Who cares? Go work with them. Like go help the drunk. This is one of the, like, I'll tell you, the two places where it's like, hey, maybe we should touch base is like before we get into a relationship with somebody. It's like we ask ourselves, is it selfish or not? The right answer will come if we want it. And right here where it's like going out to a place where there's drinking, it's like that's where it tells me to check my motives, which is rude. Because I don't know about you, those are the places I don't want to check my motives. I want to go do the fun thing. Let me go do the fun thing. So now this next line. So that your motive in going is thoroughly good. This next line is key. It says, do not think of what you can bring to the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. Let me reread that. Do not think of what you will get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. Now, I know nobody here, you just raging bunch of extroverts, nobody here would ever experience something like social anxiety. Not you guys. Never relate to that. But I'm going to give you a little hint. This is also the key to freedom from social anxiety. And I remember I went to a friend's housewarming party. And it was a friend who was in recovery. But also had a lot of friends that weren't in 12-step recovery, but were doing a lot of like therapy. So it was interesting. So there was a lot of really self-aware people at this housewarming party. And it was literally like one person was, having chips and was like, my social anxiety is just really elevated right now. And the next person was like, oh, yes, my social anxiety is so bad. And it was like everyone was going around talking about their social anxiety. Y'all know what that means? everybody was sitting thinking about what everybody thought about them. But nobody was thinking about anyone else and judging them because they were so worried that they were going to get judged by everyone else. And I can't tell you the freedom that is on offer when the posture of my heart changes. Yeah, dueling banjos. Yeah. It's like, yeah, everyone was, and I was like, oh, I could just see it so clearly, the truth that nobody cares about me. Like, in that way that I mean. You know what I mean? Nobody's thinking, oh, what's Paige doing? Oh, Paige is, well, they already know that I'm weird, so that's not a surprise. You know, like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. But that's the thing, is I'll show up to maybe a social gathering where I don't know anyone. Or I'll show up to, like I went to the international convention, and this was a wild concept to a lot of people. They were like, did you travel with anyone? And I was like, no. No. I'm like, I've run into people. I had a friend that ended up staying in my room, but we were doing our own thing. And I know this is going to sound absolutely nuts to a lot of people. I think I've only been to one, so don't quote me on anything, but I think the best way to go is go to a convention where you don't know anyone and like meet people and have an experience. You know what I mean? And some of you are like, I am going to vomit at the thought of that, Paige. Could you not? It is after dinner for most of us on the East Coast. Rude. Reasonable. Now here is my thought process, or at least here's my experience. Whenever I got to go to a meeting where I don't know anyone, or a social gathering where I don't know anyone, or a social gathering that is not my jam, like I'm not really a wedding person. I'm like, it's not my thing. But if I show up focused on, are they going to like me? What are they going to think of me? Man, I'm wrapped up in the bondage of self, and like, it is not a good time. But I'll tell you, when I showed up to places, what can I give? What can I bring? How can I be of service, man? That changes the whole environment, the whole vibe. It changes all of it. And there are times where, like, I promise, you can show up and change the whole vibe. Like, I have had great times just bringing joy to a baby shower, bringing joy to a meeting. Like, oh man, if you guys know, he's a speaker. His name's Marty C. I was out in his neck of the woods doing a day in the steps, and then one of the people that was hosting me was like, "Do you want to come to this early morning meeting?" And I said yes, but some of y'all know what a sacrifice that was for me. But I would go, and it turns out Marty was the speaker. I'm like, Marty, and he's like, Pager, and we hang out. Now, I want you to know the vibe of this meeting is, we're here, and we're sober. You know, and like no steps, and they were not, and there's a bunch of people who've been sober a long time, had not touched a step, and so they had Marty as a speaker. By the way, here's my thing, is like, I've never, he'll always show up with a suit and tie, but I've never seen anyone take off a suit and tie that quickly. You know, he's rolling up his sleeves before he's, identified as an alcoholic. You know, it's just funny. But I showed up at that meeting, and there's something wrong with me that I just bring enthusiasm, and I turn it into a cheering and hooting and hollering meeting. And he's like, I don't think they do that here. And I'm like, woo, yeah, preamble, read it. Like, we can bring joy, and knowing that I don't always feel comfortable in my own skin. Guess what that means? I can look for somebody who we can tell when we're not busy thinking about us, who's not comfortable, who's not comfy in their own skin. How can I go and make them feel comfy? That changes the whole dynamic of the event. So it says, think of what you can bring to it. That cure for social anxiety. It goes on to say, but if you are shaky, here's the direction. Not you're bad, not feel shame. You'd better work with another alcoholic instead. Go help somebody else carry this message. That's the thing that helps when nothing else is working. Go do that. It goes on to say, why sit with a long face? And I always do my little Eeyore voice. I've lost my tail. I've lost my ability to drink like a lady. You know, why sit with the long faces where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. Terry talks about be a joy bringer. Bring that joy, bring that love, bring that enthusiasm. In fact, it says if it is a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. Enthusiasm, that word is Greek, and it means to be filled with God's Spirit. Go, show up filled with that Spirit of God. And it says, if you're with a person who wants to eat at a bar, by all means go along. Let your friends know that they are not to change their habits on your account. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. I will say most of the people in my life know or knew when they saw me or didn't see me, because I would often go missing for like a period of time. It's just whoosh, vanish, which, I mean, I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I'm just into magic, you know, like here I am, here I'm not for like a month, and I'm back again, you know. Maybe I'm just into time travel too, you know, time travel where you take a drink and you're, whoop, it's a Tuesday. How did that happen? Where are my pants? You know, maybe that's a different sort of magic. I don't know. Maybe you guys, no? Okay, cool. So some of you are like, oh, I didn't know I was a magician. I'm like Marty McFly over here, you know, Back to the Future with me, you know, yeah. But they knew. And it says, if at a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. So explaining that we have the allergy of the body, that we do not have the ability to control the amount we take once we start. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. That isn't to say that all people will understand. I might have shared this with you guys before, but I remember a couple of years ago, my brother's now ex-wife, the mother of my niece and nephew, she asked if I could go to Cuba, and there was an all-inclusive in Cuba, and she was like, could you just drink while you're in Cuba? And I was like, no, like, that's not how that works. That's not, the switch does not switch back off. It goes on and there is no off. No. And she genuinely could not understand that. And so, to be fair, I thought I would work towards some of her sensibilities. She doesn't like drugs. I also do have a history with drugs. And I'm like, listen, what could happen is I would get into drugs, because I thought that would help her hear me. God bless her. Do you know what she said? She said, there's no drugs in Cuba. Sometimes you just can't communicate with people. So, you know, sometimes they just can't hear it. So so few people, and sometimes it's just a no, and it's okay that they don't understand. Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't go with them. It says, while you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life. Little by little. Now you're getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor. This next paragraph is powerful. Your job now. You remember in step 3, I got fired, absolutely fired from the management position of my life. Fired. Because my life was unmanageable and I was given the responsibility. I worked for God. And what that began to look like was a house cleaner. You know, I clean up that spiritual house in step 4, and then I do a 5th step, and I got all that stuff out of the house. Can you give me a little something? And it's like, nah, you're in the willingness department, gal. I gotta be willing for the defects to go and for this power to take them from me, and I do that. And I go to the 8th step and I'm like, hey, what about a promotion? And nope, still in willingness. Be willing to make those amends. And then I get moved into restoration, you know. I'm restoring the damage that I caused, you know. And then in step 10, I get a little addendum, which is to grow in effectiveness and understanding. But here's my job. And I'll be honest, it was my job all along. It says your job now is to be at the place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. That is my job, to be of service to God and the people about me. And I've got to clear away the stuff inside of me that is blocking me from this power so that I'm able to do that. And that's what 4 through 9 does. And I keep that channel clear in 10 and 11. And I deepen that in 10 and 11 and 12. So your job now is to be at the place where you can be of maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. Helpful. Can I be helpful? You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. I was working with a sponsee one time who lived in New Jersey, and we were at this part of the book, and then I Googled, I'm like, what's the most sordid spot in New Jersey? Allegedly, it's Camden, New Jersey. Now, Paul, if you have an opinion on that, and you're right, I'm wrong. I've never been. I think it's the Garden State. I have nothing bad to say about it. But we can go anywhere with these motives. So it says you should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. Again, an errand. I work for this power. I am a representative of this power on earth. And it says keep on the firing line of life. You remember when we spoke about the firing line? That was back in the doctor's opinion, where he talks about you stand with me a while on the firing line of life, of this illness. See the despairing wives, the broken families. You see what I see, and you will not wonder why I am all in for this solution, because this thing works. And it's saying you keep on the firing line of life with these motives. I'm here to be of service to God and the people about me, and God will keep you unharmed. I don't overcome my alcoholism, just like I don't overcome my defects of character. God does it. And the course of action allows God to work in my life. It clears away the stuff inside of me that is blocking me from this power, and God does it. God will keep you unharmed. And that's what we're called to do. And the reality is, I can go anywhere that's wheelchair accessible. I can do a couple butt scoots to get around. Sorry, I shouldn't have made that joke. But we can go anywhere if I'm connected to this power and willing to help others. And I know that I was ending on this paragraph. That's it for me. Thank you so much, Vivian.